Connecticut Voice Out Loud is brought to you by the Leonard Litz Foundation, committed to helping LGBTQ+ people everywhere live to their fullest potential. And by Tile America, a Connecticut family business for 60 years. Amazing showrooms, insightful advice. Go to tileamerica.com to get started. Hello and welcome. Thanks for choosing Connecticut Voice Out Loud, the state's only TV news magazine celebrating the LGBTQ+ community and our allies. I'm Dawn Ennis, filling in for Pat Laurie. We're at Elizabeth Park's Sunrise Overlook in Hartford, one of the highest points in our capital city. In the 125 years since this part of the park opened, the view has certainly changed, and this episode is all about leaders who are all about change for everyone's benefit. When your job is keeping America moving, it's got to be stressful, especially when there are train derailments, airline mishaps, and broken down bridges, from the Golden Gate to the Gold Star Bridge in New London. That's where I sat down recently with the United States Secretary of Transportation, the out-gay man whose job is to manage all that, while also clapping back at homophobic right-wing attacks on his marriage and raising twin toddlers. Pete Buttigieg sat down with me for his first and only interview with an out transgender journalist.
We're making some real investments right now that will make a difference. And Secretary Buttigieg, we're not going to disappoint you. This is an investment that's going to make a difference. Secretary Buttigieg.
Well, thank you, first of all, Governor. Congratulations. Happy birthday. Very glad to be able to join you.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg visited New London in early January to announce a huge windfall for Connecticut. The Biden administration chose the 80-year-old Gold Star Memorial Bridge connecting New London and Groton as one of only 4 major bridge projects in the country to receive a grant of $158 million from the bipartisan infrastructure law.
Very glad to be able to join you in starting this new term off right.
But seconds later, a car alarm sounded, then another, and a few more, each alarm blaring so loudly that heads turned away from the politicians toward the distraction. Some of the assembled speakers shook their heads, but Buttigieg didn't miss a beat, not once, in the 33 seconds it went on. A local cop told me he suspected some construction union members invited to the event staged this demonstration, using their vehicle key fobs to express their opinion about Buttigieg being gay.
Just as you started to speak at the news conference, a whole bunch of car alarms started going off. I guess that was some kind of message to you, maybe that you're not welcome. Is that something you think about? Is that something that bothers you?
Nope, but this can be a noisy business sometimes. I'm not that worried about it.
Following the news conference, Secretary Buttigieg talked one-on-one with Connecticut Voice. The last time Buttigieg made news here was in 2019, when he was Mayor Pete. He stumped for votes and campaign cash at the New Canaan home of Shiva Saram as a Democratic candidate for president, best known as the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, a Navy veteran who served in the Iraq War, and husband to another man. Now Buttigieg is Secretary Pete, the U.S. Secretary of Transportation, the first out gay American ever confirmed by the U.S. Senate to a position in a president's cabinet, and a dad to 2 toddlers. On this day, Buttigieg returned to the shoreline not asking for money, but bringing with him millions in federal funding to fix Connecticut's longest bridge.
Secretary, welcome to Connecticut. There are 4 cities that are getting grants. Why did you choose Connecticut of all places?
Well, we're really excited about this project. What you have is one specific bridge in one specific place that has implications for the entire region and really for the entire country. You think about the national security significance of electric boat, you think about the economic significance of the freight as well as the passenger travel that happens over this bridge. And I think it's a great example of why we're doing this in the first place. When you see a need, when you see trucks having to reroute and go way out of their way in order to get to where they're going because the bridge is not able to carry heavy loads, this is why we've needed this infrastructure legislation for so long. Now that we have it, we're putting those dollars to work.
You know, if I were you, I'd be tempted to pick up the phone and call President Trump and say, hey, it's Infrastructure Week, finally. For real.
You know, Infrastructure Week was a joke for such a long time, but now it's an infrastructure decade, and you're looking at it right here. You know, this is a state that, first of all, for somebody like me with a connection to the Navy, means a great deal. It's really exciting to be back here.
I'm not sure if you're aware, but our interstate system is helping families flee states of hate. They are raising their trans kids, and in Texas and in Florida, that's outlawed to have gender-affirming care. Connecticut won't extradite them. That's our law. What can you do, if anything?
Well, of course, we want to make sure the transportation system is here for parents and families and kids who need to feel safe. But the most important thing is for them not to be in that situation in the first place. And not just speaking for myself, but this administration is going to continue pushing back on this kind of anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ legislation that really is endangering kids, endangering families, and sends the exact wrong message. If you're pro-family, you got to be for every family. If you believe in supporting parents, you got to believe in supporting parents who are trying to do right by their kids. And unfortunately, what we see, really for nakedly political reasons, is in certain states like Texas, like Florida, we're seeing the exact opposite of those family values that I think most of us as Americans believe in, which is to take care of people and to support parents who are trying to support their kids.
You mentioned personally, so if I can ask you a personal question, how are the babies doing? How are you and your husband doing?
They're doing great. We got them in daycare, and you know, they're pretty much running our world. They're coming up on a year and a half, so they're walking. It's you know, it's a very physical thing trying to keep up with two toddlers, and keeps Chasten, my husband, and me on our toes. But it's the most beautiful thing that's ever happened to us, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
Buttigieg says he's not interested in running for president again or seeking an open Senate seat in his new home state of Michigan. He's focused on his job and his family.
Well, you know, every working parent has to figure out a way to make it happen, and you know, I try to be there for Chasten at whether it's breakfast time today. I was slicing the bananas while he was putting their little sweaters on, or whether it's in the evening, I try to be there for bath time and bedtime any day that I can. Unfortunately, it won't be possible today, but you know, we help each other out as you know, as so many parents do, and I'm just so proud to see our kids growing and thriving and healthy.
I wonder if you realize sometimes what it means for our LGBTQ community here in Connecticut to see you, a gay man, at the center of power in Washington, and the prestige. Do you ever think about that?
I sometimes do, but I would put it the other way around, which is to say that, you know, somebody like me would not have a chance to serve, to live openly, to be raising my kids, to be talking about my involvement in infrastructure policy as a member of the President's cabinet, and what my husband and I are doing to feed our kids and raise them and support them. That conversation wouldn't even be possible if it weren't for the work and the advocacy of so many in the community who were there even before I was around, and I recognize that I'm standing on their shoulders, just even being able to serve and have this role.
As congressional Republicans investigate the secretary, call for his resignation, and join conservative media mouthpieces in attacking him, Buttigieg remains unflappable. And as we know all too well, the best way to respond to a bully is to keep doing what you're doing and ignore them. Next on Connecticut Voice Out Loud, a local healthcare leader who's an outspoken LGBTQ+ advocate tells us what everyone needs to know what to do when a life is on the line. And later, the audacious Kion Wolf shares the extraordinary, uncommon experiences of everyday people. Stay with us.
Need to feel inspired? At Tile America, you can shop tile from all around the world and breathtaking installations, with someone who can help you create a space that is uniquely you and guide you through all the endless choices. At Tile America, we know tile inside and out because we've been doing it for 60 years. Tile America, amazing showrooms, insightful advice.
There are many gay or lesbian or transgender children who are turned away from their home, turned away from their family.
How do you get through this? You're the only gay person in the world, and also within 100 miles.
We persevered, and we built a life. We built a life together. LGBTQ kids have no role models for that. If we can help them in any way, our story hopefully will be an inspiration to them.
If you're looking to start a family, talk to us. We're the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services. For the past 40 years, we've been providing expert fertility care. with over 100 dedicated staff members focused on your dream. Since we opened our doors, we've celebrated the births of over 18,000 babies and still counting. Begin your journey with just one call. 844-HOPE-IVF, yukonfertility.com.
Dr. David Shapiro is Chief Medical Officer for St. Francis Hospital in Hartford, a member of Trinity Health of New England. We profile Dr. Shapiro in our spring issue of Connecticut Voice and talk about all the important work he's done in the LGBTQ+ community to raise the face of surgical practice and to make it more diverse and inclusive. But Dr. Shapiro has a passion project, one that we just alluded to in our article. It's called Stop the Bleed, and he joins me now to talk about that, its genesis, and how he became involved.
Bleeding is the #1 cause of death that's preventable after an injury. So if you can prevent the bleeding or stop it when it's happening, you can prevent someone from dying.
When we spoke earlier for the Connecticut Voice magazine, you told me the story of how you got involved in this. That dates back to your childhood.
I think I was 15 years old, and my family had a department store, and we were very frequently at this big event called the Sidewalk Sale. And there was an event that happened there that I witnessed. I was about 10 feet away when it happened. And a gentleman who'd been released from one of the special hospitals in Connecticut for people with mental health challenges, was released from the hospital, went and bought a knife and stabbed a young girl many, many times in front of all the public to see. And a bunch of us decided we wanted to help. So we jumped in and we tried to help the little girl, and we took off T-shirts and we had towels because it was summer and people were just trying to compress and stop. This young girl wound up dying from this injury. Others tried to subdue the assailant, but we were focused on the person who needed the help. And growing up after that, I knew I wanted to go into healthcare. I had family members who'd been in the hospital. I'd been exposed to TV shows that got me interested in things like surgery. But there was something about that event that sparked a certain line. But I think the important message there is that Stop the Bleed is something that can be approached by any age. That means that if you're a crafter at home and you cut your hand, you can use the technique. If you're using a chainsaw or tools on the weekend, you can use the technique. If you witness a crash of a car or a weather-related disaster or anything that results in bleeding, you can intervene. So what we did was I approached Hasbro, and what I pitched to them was we should put Stop the Bleed in a G.I. Joe comic book as a PSA. So Hasbro did. At the end, we got to say that everyone should know how to stop the bleed, and knowing is half the battle, which is something that G.I. Joe coined, a couple decades ago. Being part of the LGBT community, and we have people who are attacked, shot, stabbed, and injured in a variety of locations. While stopping the event before it happens is the most important thing we can do, the most effective in the absence of that is providing people the opportunity to learn how to stop bleeding and help save a life when something does happen.
I really think that this is something that is as basic for people to understand as, say, knowing how to do the Heimlich maneuver in a restaurant or in that kind of situation. And it's basically a very simple process. Can you tell me the 3 things that you need to do to stop the bleed?
So first step is to call 911 or call the emergency services in your area. Second is to do the 3 steps that are included in Stop the Bleed. 1 is direct pressure. So use 1 piece of fabric, put it on the wound, and directly hold pressure on it. Second thing is if somebody has a big gaping wound, so imagine that this cup is actually a big hole in someone's body that you have, a knife or other things scrape against it. You try to take the packing or the gauze and you pack it inside as tight as you can, then put a piece of fabric on top and compress it. Why does that help? Because if you can imagine, a big gaping wound will have areas inside that are bleeding, blood vessels, other organs that can have bleeding. If you pack it, it becomes tightly pressed inside where you as a person can't press. So you pack it and then compress it. So it's direct pressure, packing, and then a tourniquet. And the manufactured tourniquets are actually quite effective. And we try to remind people that you twist the tourniquet, you write the time and the date or the initials of the person who did it, and you send the patient on their way. Because a tourniquet can help stop the bleeding at its source in one of the arteries upstream. So if we can do those 3 things, we can save the majority of people from bleeding to death. And I say it very matter-of-factly because you as a person can save people from bleeding to death.
Dr. Shapiro, thank you so much for spending the time with us today. This is really important information. You can read all about Dr. Shapiro and his amazing surgical career in our current issue of Connecticut Voice. And for more information on Stop the Bleed and how you or your organization can get involved, visit stopthebleed.org. For Voice Out Loud, I'm Christopher Byrne.
If you were to design a great tile buying experience, what would it look like? An incredible showroom filled with endless ideas and inspiration, products from all around the world, and people who know tile because they design with it every day. Tile America, amazing showrooms, insightful advice.
At Lux Bond & Green, we have been designing and crafting custom jewelry for decades. Quality, value, and selection. Lux Bond & Green Jewelers, where every box has a story.
There are many gay or lesbian or transgender children who are turned away from their home, turned away from their family.
How do you get through this? You're the only gay person in the world, and also within 100 miles.
We persevered, and we built a life. We built a life together. LGBTQ kids have no role models for that. If we can help them in any way, our story hopefully will be an inspiration to them.
It was almost 525,600 minutes ago that my daughter and I saw a local performance of the legendary Broadway musical Rent, and we were blown away. But the really amazing thing, everyone on stage, the actors, singers, the director, the set builders, the lighting, and the audio people, all of them were high school students enrolled in the half-day program at the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts. It's a public school where social justice and being queer are commonplace, where love is in the lessons and art is a necessity.
You would be taboo. Kaylee, guess what waits for you? An eternity in the fiery pits of hell.
Take your Anthony suit off, Grandpa.
Picking up Whitman's book.
I'm just saying. The thing about paper is that it generally always works.
Whoa! Are you posting that? Of course, audibly I am.
Of course, absolutely, I
Of
think.
course,
Like,
absolutely. Of course, absolutely I am.
Pause.
Okay.
Anthony wants more.
All right, let's pause there.
My name is Vivian Speaks.
I am Hannah Sims.
I'm Andrew Rivera.
So my name is Cecil. I teach in the theater department here at the Academy.
Hey, I'm Wesley Santiago.
He, him.
My pronouns are he, him, and I teach in the visual arts department.
I currently identify loosely as a trans man.
I use she or they pronouns. She, her.
I'm a queer woman in a straight passing relationship.
I am gay, black, Puerto Rican, and I think that's enough.
We are here because every student who wants to go into the arts deserves a stellar, rigorous, pre-professional program, and we are here to meet any student from any background who wants to work at being an artist to come here.
It's super fun here. Well, in terms of diversity, the school is much more racially and gender sexuality wise diverse than my school. My home school is predominantly white.
It is different from my school. Personally, I go to New Bern High, so I would definitely say this school is more open and more diverse compared to the school that I would go to. It is diverse at my school, but I wouldn't say as open to how this school is open to us.
As far as like sexuality and like identity, like personal gender identification, all that kind of stuff, very much different. Very vibrant, like a lot of variability between here compared to there.
There's a lot less like acceptance at my home school. Like here we have flags everywhere, and there it's like, well, if you talk about it, we'll bring it up. And the student body here is a lot more accepting.
Creatively and artist-wise, that's where I write as my perspective. I write from a black gay person usually, and if it's about that, you know, typically, that's fun, and I try my best to cover different like points of view of that, I guess, and I also try my best not to only focused on the bad parts. Because I feel like a lot of media nowadays like only chooses to focus on the suffering and the darkness of it, which, trust me, as we know, there is a lot of that here. But we also, as people, as young people, and if we're going to, as a writer, and trying to become that in society in general, to teach younger people that like it's okay to be you, show them the good parts too, because they deserve to know that being gay, being trans, being whatever isn't all doom and gloom. If you're not cis and you're not white and you're not straight, your life is terrible. Well, yes, it can be. Does not necessarily mean that is the only reason. You can live in your existence and you can be happy as well.
The idea of trans people being like silenced or being like our identities erased, it's honestly terrifying to me. Like the only reason it doesn't keep me up at night is because I just turn the mind, little DVT phrase there, turn the mind away from it. But it's always a struggle to deal with that. But this is Connecticut, which is like a pretty blue state, and especially in this school, it makes me feel kind of hopeful that things won't always be this way, that people are getting educated about this kind of stuff at schools like this.
The major I'm in theater design and production. So what we do is we do building for the sets, for the plays that we do. We do technical things, crew, wardrobe for the actors and actresses, for the plays that we put on. So it's just everything is hands-on, go, 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 do what you have to do. But it's really good because you're not only just building, things for sets and doing technical things, you're also building relationships with people that you're working with.
I think that queer people have always found a home in the arts, and that's very true here. And when I came in, I've only been working here for this year. I did some subbing last year. And when I came in and at our very first staff meeting, we're checking on what everybody's pronouns are and what has changed since last year, and just that this conversation is like a basic part of the way, a basic and routine part of the way that we communicate as staff, is how to honor the identity of every student. That felt really good.
Cultures for thousands of years, art was part of their daily life. They didn't just dance for a club, they danced because it was a human, ceremonies and things like that. So we try to teach that art is a necessity. These students really care about the arts. They really are searching, and we want to provide that environment for them to do that search safely, feel safe doing it, and not feel judged, basically. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, when it comes to race and things like that, like the students know that that's something that we're fighting and striving for, to be able to talk about. But I think it's also an education that is missing in a lot of schools. Mm-hmm. I think when a student is next to someone that lives differently, and all of a sudden they find out, oh, there's a different perspective, and they're aware of that. We talk about how the struggles between different people, whether it's the LGBTQI plus community, whether it's the African American community, the struggles are very similar, and the struggles inspired each other. There's a reason why the civil rights movement and the different movements are kind of like, almost like a wave, and they each affected each other. So there's many ways for us to connect with each other, and then there's a lot of links that we can make, and this school allows that.
We feel like as much as we are able, the faculty should reflect the demographics of the students. So everybody has somebody here that looks like them, acts like them, perhaps thinks like them. Within every art form, you will find some form of social justice. Either they're looking at the materials within the class, they're looking at students being involved in decision making, they're looking at being able to step out into the community. It costs nothing. This is a public school. It is funded by state and federal funds, and any student who wants to come here and can get here is able to come tuition cost-free.
Acceptance to the Greater Hartford Academy of the Arts half-day program is done through a lottery. Registration is done through the Regional School Choice Office. Transportation is provided free of charge by CREC, the Capital Region Education Council. Find out more by going online to gahd.crecschools.org. Up next, Kion Wolf gets audacious. Stay with us.
You were to design a great tile buying experience, what would it look like? An incredible showroom filled with endless ideas and inspiration, products from all around the world, and people who know tile because they design with it every day. Tile America, amazing showrooms, insightful advice.
At Lux Bond & Green, we have been designing and crafting custom jewelry for decades. Quality, value, and selection. Lux Bond & Green Jewelers, where every box has a story.
Hi, Kyone. Thank you so much for meeting with me.
Thanks for talking with me, Allie.
So we're here to talk about your latest project. You have many, but right now your latest huge project is your radio show, Audacious.
One of the things I love about public radio is that they do their research and they dig a lot deeper into the things that you may not think about. And one opportunity that I saw after working there for 13 years at Connecticut Public was digging deeper into the stories of the public, the P in public, right? And, not necessarily featuring artists or authors or politicians, people who are well known, but these people who've been through experiences of which they are the expert, right? When you're an expert on your own experience, and even deeper, experiences that may be misunderstood or difficult or intimidating to talk about, and sort of reveal the voices of people who maybe haven't gotten the attention that they very much well deserve. And having this access lets me ask the questions that I've always wanted to ask, even though I actually don't really need a good reason to do it. I would do it anyway. And I hope that the listeners get out of it sort of like you're at the table with me, and you're feeling intimate with this person just like I am. And if my heart is racing because the question is a bit difficult to ask, maybe your heart is racing too. And because you're at the table with me, you feel connected to this other person who you might not ever meet. And so the next time you're at the table, so in any way with somebody that who you don't understand, maybe when you listen to the way I speak with them, maybe you'll know, oh, I can ask this question too. And there's a way to ask it with respect and compassion. And so hopefully my goal is not only for you to be a more informed human being with a greater sense of what humanity has to offer, but also to become a better interviewer in your own life. The voice of a human being really, truly does tell you quite a bit about everything about them, with some exceptions for sure. But I think not being able to see the person lets your mind feel close to them, because your image of them is your image of them. And if you go look them up, sure, go ahead, look me up. I probably don't look like how you thought I'd look, but and that's just fun. But I love, again, the intimacy of the human voice and how your imagination can tell a story that's accurate to how the story is being told on the whole. And so I love that it comes in and out through Audacious and through all the work I'm doing as a part of it, but by no means is it absolutely everything.
Kyone, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us.
You can find Audacious at ctpublic.org and wherever you get your podcasts. And look for Kyone in the current issue of Connecticut Voice magazine, as well as ctvoice.com. There you'll find many more stories and videos, including some by me, Dawn Ennis. Thanks for watching Connecticut Voice Out Loud. Stay proud and loud, Connecticut.